For today's cup of coffee, we've got some interesting things. My orange orbs of happiness.
Yeah.
I love them.
We forgot the little babies, but that's okay.
I love them.
Oh,
there is just something magical about a pumpkin patch, and I don't think that came from the Charlie Brown thing. I was like that.
It's
probably.
a great pumpkin.
Absolutely.
We got the pumpkin over there with the legs and arms.
We have a variety of pumpkin things in the house.
I don't know what happened to the actual pumpkin child, the one with the pumpkin head.
I don't know. I don't know. The plushie.
Goodwill.
Oh, that one. Oh, that's right. I remember that. I don't know. He's somewhere on the wall of fuckery. So anyhow, we're going to be talking about the origins of the jack-o'-lantern.
You know what? I watched a video about that earlier.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, then you're all prepared for today.
It was actually the orange pumpkin in general.
Okay. Which we don't have just orange ones now. They've branched out. I'm not a fan of the white ones per se.
They weren't just orange to begin with.
Were they not? Was there a variety of colors?
Yes. Always has been.
The interesting green gourd thingies there's just a large variety that they're bringing into the stores now, which is great. But anyhow, this is taken from the writing of Erik. From the irishmyths.com.
The Irish myths.
So, Erik, thank you for doing the research. And we
don't know you, Erik, but thank you.
Thank you, Erik. But anyhow, we will put the link in the description box. And, the Irish origins of the jack-o'-lantern. Now, I was, had known quite a bit as far as where the jack-o'-lantern came from.
Yeah.
And there's a legend that's about a man called Stingy Jack.
Stingy Jack?
Uh-huh. And Stingy Jack is supposedly the man that the jack-o'-lantern is named after.
Okay.
And Jack was an unsavory blacksmith, and he would have to be with a name like Stingy Jack. You don't get that by being a nice guy.
No.
Anyhow, he supposedly invited the devil for a drink, but he refused to pay the bill.
Wow.
And he convinced the devil to shape-shift into a coin to cover the tab. But when the devil agreed, Jack stuck the coin in his pocket. And unknown to the devil at the time of the bargain, there was also a silver cross in the same pocket, which prevented the devil from returning to his original form.
Oh, wow.
So Jack may have been an ass, but he wasn't stupid.
No.
So he strikes a deal with the devil. That's always the bad, it's always the start to a bad ending on that.
Yeah.
And Jack says that he will set the devil free if the devil will agree to prevent Jack from entering hell when he dies and to leave him alone for a year. Mm-hmm. So devil agrees, but a year later, the devil comes back to confront Jack. But Jack is ready for him. So he's had a year to plan.
Yeah.
And Jack convinces the devil to climb a tree with the promise of delicious fruit.
Okay.
But once the devil is up in the tree, Jack carves a cross into the trunk so the devil can't come down. So another deal is struck. And Jack frees the devil in exchange for 10 years of peace. So within those 10 years, Jack dies. So the devil, true to his word, refuses to let Jack into hell. God, meanwhile, refuses to let Jack into heaven. So Jack's fate is to wander the earth forever in eternal darkness, but the devil had a little bit of mercy on him. That's sort of an oxymoron. So he tossed Jack a lump of burning coal from hell so that he could have a little bit of light. So Jack carved out a turnip and stuck the coal inside, creating a lantern.
Okay.
Thus, Jack of the Lantern, which is later shortened to jack-o'-lantern. But wait, there's more.
Ooh.
There's a beginning to the story which most sources, they don't even bother with. And in this part of the story, Jack who was acting out of character, actually helped an old man on the side of the road, and the old man was actually an angel in disguise. And the angel did something very uncharacteristic to angels, because he told Jack that he could have 3 wishes. So I think somebody got confused on that.
Just a little bit.
But Jack, not being an honorable man, his 3 wishes were: 1, that anybody who sits in his chair will be stuck to the spot. 2, that anybody who takes a bough from his sycamore tree will be stuck to the spot. And 3, anybody who borrows Jack's tools will be stuck to the spot. Now that last one I could go along with. I'm looking at you.
Don't at me like that.
So the angel actually grants these wishes, but because the wishes were selfish and petty, the angel decided that when Jack dies, he ain't going into heaven. So
he screwed himself out of that one.
Absolutely, he certainly did. To quote the Irish Times, it's fitting that a character trapped in an earthly purgatory should become the lasting symbol of Halloween, a time when people are as wont to offer a trick as a treat. The character of Jack, a figure who doesn't fit into heaven or hell, is unusually complex for a figure from a folktale. End quote. One could assume that scary faces are carved into vegetables on Halloween because an 18th century Irish folk antihero shoved a hell coal into a turnip. No, that's not the true meaning on that.
Okay.
Another interpretation suggests that the purpose of creating the jack-o'-lanterns is not to celebrate stingy Jack, but to protect oneself from him.
Oh.
And journalist Kayla Hartz of Irish Central has written, this legend is why people in Ireland and Scotland began to make their own versions of Jack's lantern by carving grotesque faces into turnips, something I don't even know what a mangel-wurzel is, potatoes and beets.
What the heck is that?
I've never heard of that in my life. And placing them beside their homes to frighten away stingy Jack and other wandering evil spirits and travelers. Now, that was the part that I had heard. I had not heard about stingy Jack, but as far as it warding off other evil spirits, yeah, that was the one.
Yeah.
But there's still another theory as to the origin of the jack-o'-lantern, and that's older and explains a phenomenon that would happen from time to time, and that is the one of the will-o'-the-wisp. We don't have that as much around here. Will-o'-wisp, which are also called fairy lights, fool's fire, and jack-o'-lanterns.
Okay.
And this phenomenon is an eerie flickering light. I've heard that it's got like a blue color to it that occurs over peat bogs and marshlands, which is caused by the combustion of gases that are being released from decomposing organic matter. See, that's the reason we're not familiar. We don't have that many swamps around here.
Yeah.
We don't have peat bogs. We have mountains.
Yeah, that's pretty much
it. So some people...
We got other stuff to look at.
Yeah. Some people tell the story of Stingy Jack as an explanation of what they were seeing, and this then became a common legend. As the black cat yesterday, we found how 1 or 2 people can just start shit rolling and it just rolls on down. According to Nathan Mannion, senior curator of Dublin's Irish Immigration Museum, the will-o'-the-wisp often seemed like floating flame that would move away from the travelers. And he stated, quote, if you were to try to follow the light, you could go into a sinkhole or bog or drown. People thought it was Jack-o'-the-lantern, a lost soul, or a ghost, end quote. And the source that was used was from National Geographic. But there's still another one.
Really?
Absolutely. For the term of jack-o'-lantern. In 17th century Britain, Jack was a common name for someone to be called when you didn't know their name. Sort of like John Doe. Sort of like Joe Schmo. He's been MIA for the past couple of days. Hope he's all right. So an anonymous night watchman would sometimes be called a jack-o'-the-lantern or jack-o'-lantern. Because they roam in the night. They got the lantern. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Then in the there was an 18th century tradition in, I'm going to try this, guys, Worcestershire, England.
I ain't even going to try to correct you on that. 'Cause
And
I
that
have
is
no
known
idea.
as Hobarty's lantern. And I didn't have a problem with Hobarty.
Yeah.
We've actually had people around here named Hobart.
Hobart.
So, yeah.
Hobart?
Absolutely. Which could be made by hollowing out a turnip, carving a face on the outside, and sticking a candle inside. So it's possible that the jack-o'-lantern is actually a British invention, but the Irish origin for the jack-o'-lantern is still widely held by scholars and historians, the main reason being Ireland's Celtic history.
Ooh.
In Celtic groups of northern Europe, which included Ireland, Scotland, Wales, the Isle of Man, Cornwall, and Brittany, the carving of human faces into round fruits and vegetables has actually been going on for thousands of years, which, according to Nathan Mannion again of the Irish Immigration Museum, likely evolved from the Celtic custom of head veneration.
Fruits and vegetables. I've never heard of them carving a face into a banana.
It's round. It said round. It said
Bananas
round.
are round and they're oblonged.
No, God. Anyhow, this is where you've totally messed me up. Evolved from the Celtic custom of head veneration,
tomatoes.
wherein the severed heads of one's enemies were taken as war trophies.
So like shrunken heads.
No, that was somebody else's culture. Stay focused.
I said almost like shrunken heads, sort of like shrunken heads.
The myths of ancient Ireland explains the significance that was placed on human heads. There's a story of an Ulster hero who returned from his first ever battle with 3 heads hanging from his chariot, as well as, quote, 9 heads in one hand and 10 in the other, and these he brandished at the host in token of his valor and prowess.
But
end
how
quote.
did they not rot?
This was fresh out of the kill. Okay. In the book, The Destruction of Daguerre's Hostel, the warrior Connell pours water into the mouth of the High King of Ireland's severed head, and the head thanks him.
Oh,
Ancient historians
that's freaky.
Livy and Diodorus Siculus, I don't know where these people are from. It's like,
Diodorus
don't do
Siculus.
this for me. Both tell of instances where Celtic warriors would hang the severed heads of their slain foes from the necks of their horses. And Siculus further notes that especially distinguished foes were given the royal treatment. Their heads were embalmed in cedar oil and displayed with pride to visitors. So there you go. That was their form of preservation on these heads.
All right.
This practice is also reflected in the ancient Irish tradition of creating brain balls, wherein the brains of enemies were hardened with lime and used as slingshot projectiles.
Oh.
So there you go. There's a
brain matter.
yeah.
Oh.
Well, you know,
That's horrible.
there's a project for you.
For me to make brain balls.
Well, you know.
How can I go to jail for that?
Well, not human ones. You can do the other ones.
That's just morbid. You don't do that shit. How dare you?
Why not? Our ancestors did.
Do we look like our ancestors? No, I don't think so.
Anyhow, I don't know why that one got such a reaction, all this other stuff. But as far as
Yep.
did the other heads decay, of course they did. And that was what I talk about.
They could've just
and
kept the skulls.
in Britain and stuff like that, that was, and other places, as far as to put the heads on a pole as a warning. Now we will discuss Vlad Tepes at some point.
There was a girl that got her head smacked off with a telephone pole.
Well, that happens quite often with guide wires and stuff like that. People don't pay attention.
Yeah, it was in the movie Hereditary.
Oh, well, no, I've known that happened to somebody's son in real life.
Yeah, that's horrifying.
Yeah, it was horrifying. Anyhow, so
Whose head is laying on the side of the road?
why were heads so important
Well, you
to
lost a head
ancient
there.
Celtic peoples, including the Irish? And to quote historian Peter Ellis, author of Dictionary of Irish Mythology and the Celtic Empire, he writes, the ancient Irish revered the human head as, indeed, did all ancient Celtic societies. it was in the head and not in the heart that they seemed to locate the souls of men and women. Archaeological finds give full collaboration to this cult. And end quote, and that source was taken from a dictionary of Irish mythology. Now, the Irish are not the only ones, because I know that there was a group of Hindus, I think it was Hindus, I don't think it's the Buddhists that do that, that the cremation, when the parents die, that it is up to the oldest son to break the skull of their cremated parent, because that releases the soul.
Okay.
So it was not just a cultic thing, or a Celtic thing to do.
But there's holes in the skull, so why would you have to break it?
This is somebody else's tradition. It was a matter of just freeing the soul. I roll with it. I haven't delved that much into it.
Because there are holes in the skull, are there not?
There are, but it's not the same as as far as the skull part, as opposed to the face part.
It could just leak out from the nose.
This is somebody else's culture. This is somebody else's beliefs. If somebody would like to explain this, I would be more than willing to listen. And during the Celtic festival of Samhain, it looks like Samhain, but it's Samhain.
Samhain.
When it was believed that souls from the other world were able to cross over into the land of the living, the cult of the head reached a fever pitch. Armed with a plethora of root vegetables from the recent harvest, because Samhain marked the end of one pastoral year and the beginning of the next, ancient peoples carved frightening faces in an effort to ward off restless souls. So it's a protective thing.
Yeah.
There was also a fire element to the festival. On the night of October 31st, when the festival began, all fires burning across Ireland and other Celtic countries were supposed to be extinguished and could only be rekindled from a ceremonial fire lit by the Druids. To facilitate this practice, a good deal of lanterns were needed to transport the coals, so the carved root vegetables served a practical purpose in addition to a symbolic one.
All right.
To quote Mannion again, metal lanterns were quite expensive, so people would hollow out root vegetables. Over time, people started to carve faces and designs to allow light to shine through the holes without extinguishing the ember. And again, that is sourced from National Geographic. That must have been something to see.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Now, I cooked a pot of turnips today, and some of them were, rather large, but I cannot imagine carving a turnip large enough to put a light in it.
I can't think of that.
That must have been a big turnip. Then you had, when the Christians arrived, the festival of Samhain was used for their own purposes and turned November 1st into All Saints' Day or All Hallows. So the evening before became known as All Hallows Eve, which is our Halloween. The Celtic cult of the head was largely forgotten, and the vegetable lanterns with their frightening faces were reinterpreted by some as representations of Christian souls in purgatory.
Interesting.
So let's repurpose that happened lots.
Yeah, I bet.
The story of Stingy Jack, the man who was forever stuck between heaven and hell, worked well with Christian narrative. So in addition to being used to explain the phenomenon of the will-o'-the-wisp, an explanation of the origins of the jack-o'-lantern, the story of Jack served as a cautionary morality tale.
Okay.
And that's, again, according to Mannion, who elaborates, quote, Jack was a soul trapped between two worlds, and if you behaved like he did, you could end up like that too, end quote.
No, thank you.
So how did all these traditions come to America?
Oh.
You don't know, do you?
I don't know. That's what I asked you.
You didn't study. During and after the Great Famine, which was the Great Potato Famine in Ireland, millions of Irish immigrants came to North America, and with them they brought their ancient Samhain Halloween traditions of vegetable carving. So while originally accustomed to using turnips, beets, and potatoes, the tradition was easily adapted to the pumpkin.
Okay.
And made a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah.
And the first mention of the pumpkin jack-o'-lantern appears in Nathaniel Hawthorne's 1835 short story, The Great Carbuncle, in which a band of adventurers seeks out a legendary gem. And Hawthorne wrote, "Hide it under the cloak, sayest thou, why it will gleam through the holes and make thee look like a jack-o'-lantern."
Oh.
There is debate that Hawthorne may have been referring to will-o'-wisp rather than pumpkins because his story was written before the influx of Irish immigrants.
Right.
According to the Irish Times, the first definitive reference to a pumpkin jack-o'-lantern carved in celebration of Halloween occurred in 1886 when a Canadian newspaper, the Daily News, wrote, quote, "The old-time custom of keeping up Halloween was not forgotten last night by the youngsters of the city. There was a great sacrifice of pumpkins from which to make transparent heads and face, lighted up by the unfailing 2 inches of tallow candle."
Okay.
However, it should be noted that the first image of a pumpkin jack-o'-lantern appeared nearly two decades before this, and that was from November 23rd, 1867. That was an issue of Harper's Weekly. It was published alongside an article titled "A Pumpkin Effigy," but the article did not refer to the pumpkin as a jack-o'-lantern, nor did it reference Halloween.
Huh.
So why would you have a jack-o'-lantern and not mention Halloween?
Yeah.
And that was where you had some cool drawings and the retro artwork and stuff, and which we love.
Yeah, we
just
do love
it.
that.
Then by the turn of the century, the pumpkin jack-o'-lantern had become the symbol of Halloween in North America. Once intended to scare off unwanted nocturnal visitors, they were now used to welcome visitors and convey a sense of mirth and community. And to quote Cindy Ott, author of Pumpkin, The Curious History of an American Icon, that's another book that I need in my collection.
Yeah, definitely.
She writes, "At Halloween, you don't go up to someone's house unless they have a jack-o'-lantern. It's about cementing a community, projecting good values, neighborliness. The pumpkin and jack-o'-lantern take on those meanings too," end quote.
We love that.
And then to quote Jessica Traynor, writing for the Irish Times, quote, "Stories rarely stay the same over time. They change, evolve, become symbol and metaphor, especially when people move to new places and different myths and cultures intermingle," end quote.
That's really cool.
I thought that was really cool too. And the writer of the article, he said, "Here's to myths and cultures continuing to intermingle." And I could see him lifting a pint as he had written that.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Halloween, just the origins, and this again focusing on the jack-o'-lantern.
Mm-hmm.
Something anybody can share if they want to.
Yeah.
And how cool is that? They are orange orbs of happiness, and that's just like the on the channel, the artwork, the thumbnail that I use. That was a pumpkin that youngest kid over here carved. How many years ago?
It was years ago, but it was in the image of Ill Will Press's character Pumpkin Guy.
It was inspired by him, but it was and is yours, and it brought me so much joy then, and it brings me joy every day. So when you click on that, you're seeing youngest kid's artwork, and his mama's proud of him. So
Mama has better artwork.
No. Anyhow, plan on getting you an orange orb of happiness this year.
Yes.
And just, I
can take one up to the cabin.
You could. There's all kinds of things that you can do with him. If you don't want to carve him, you can paint a face on him. It's not the same, but you could do it.
Yeah.
And just put you a little candle in there. Now, you're not supposed to blow the candles out. You're supposed to
let them burn out.
Yeah. And you can get those little cheap $1 candles and stuff and enjoy.
Yeah,
enjoy.
Absolutely.
So, the origin of the jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it is.
If you've had experiences with the supernatural and paranormal, encounters with UFOs, aliens, cryptids, jack-o'-lanterns, will-o'-the-wisps, any of those things, if you've got local, regional, country, family myths, legends that we may not know about.
Do you still carve pumpkins? Do you make jack-o'-lanterns?
Yeah, let us know. Send us those things at cupofcoffeewithscream@gmail.com.
Make videos of it too and show us.
Oh yeah, I did that one year as far as pumpkin carvings.
Yeah.
It's been quite a few years back. I've been doing this for quite a few years. So that would be a cool thing. Yeah, we'll give us a link. We'll get a link to you.
Mm-hmm. I need to get a few tiny pumpkins or whatever that I could carve and put up at the cabin.
I can't even imagine, like I said, the thought of carving a potato or a turnip. We could do some of that.
People have done that, and they have literally made a flute. A
wind
instrument out of a potato.
We could go total old school this year with carving at the turnips.
Yeah, totally. We could do that. We can make rattles with them.
I would rather be eating the turnips, which, like I said, my turnips that I have cooked today are calling to me.
I'm sorry. I would rather make instruments with them.
Oh, no. Turnips be tasty.
You think they're tasty. I do not.
I don't understand. I can go to a grocery store and I can have turnips. And these kids looking, it's like, what is that? And it's like, how do you not know what a turnip is? So, I don't know.
I don't know what the fuck a rutabaga is, but I
have eaten a rutabaga before. I wasn't impressed. Didn't do it again. Same thing with parsnips. But now turnips, yes, I am a fan of the turnips.
Yeah.
So if you have turnip recipes that you would like to send us, you can do that too.
Absolutely. We got a cat over here.
We've got cats
just throwing a fit because we're not interacting with him.
Well, they do that because they're spoiled.
Yeah.
But you all have a beautiful, blessed day, and we'll see you on the next cup.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Subscribe.